Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I'm mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too. This week I'm going to honor Robert Bly, poet laureate and helpful male mentor of mine, especially with respect to translating fairy tales through some Jungian psychology, which really opened up a whole field of symbolism for me. I want to talk about the road to ashes, the fact that nobody wants to go down. We have an ascending culture. Everything is about flying high, being above it all, staying a flying boy, as they would say. But in ashes, the idea is to learn to swing the pendulum to the opposite side. It's called enantiodromia. Jung used to do this with patients. If a person said, "Oh, I've just been promoted, I feel such great enthusiasm," he used to, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Maybe if we stick together, we'll get through it." And then on the opposite, if a person would come and say, "Oh, I'm so depressed and ashamed, I've been fired," he said, "Well, let's have a bottle of champagne and celebrate. I think this is wonderful news. Something good is going to happen now." So that kind of turning around in terms of your approach to what happens when something intervenes in your life, a breakthrough, a breakdown, you have to descend. All initiations require some descent. And that means looking at and grieving over, mourning for the losses in one's life. But no one wants to take the road of ashes. No one wants to move from the nurturing house of mommy to the sturdy, challenging house of daddy. Now, when you take the road of ashes, you have to understand this is so you can get your fire going again. I used to live in Tennessee, and we had a Franklin stove, and it had a huge pipe that went from the first floor to the second floor, and that's how you heated the house. And you could only put in so many logs before, if you don't clean out the ashes, the next time you try to put a fire in there, the logs, the ashes go all over the place. So you got to periodically sweep out the ashes, otherwise the fire won't have a good draft. So when you go back into your ashes, you go back into your own childhood memories. You go back into looking at what wasn't so nice about your family. And we're not here to castigate the parents or blame them in any way. Just to have a realistic assessment of how we want to stay above it all. We want to be cheery all the time. And it's a kind of naive view. So it's as if we have to go within and have a hibernating period where we try to make sense of and bring back something creative from what happened to us. Everybody's ashes is different, just like your fingerprints are different. And so the ashes of your life and the worlds that they would make are so individual that you have to learn not to diminish the importance of what happened to you in the past. How you ought to shudder about the negative things that happened to you and that you've been exposed to in life. How you have to understand what has made you numb and not bringing back your vitality, your creativity. And in the men's work, it's often said that you can't change a boy into a man without the active intervention of an older, unrelated man. The tension is always a little too great between father and son. It's an older, unrelated man that could come in and recognize your genius, see your gold, bless you, convince you have something of tremendous worth within you, a spark of the divine, you could say. Or you could say another metaphor, you're a prince, you're a son of royalty. You have this wonderful thing within you. I see it. I bless it. And then you don't try to skip over any of the ugly facts of childhood or life itself. You're no longer pretending you're indifferent. You're willing to look at your dark side and the addictions, not only that your parents maybe had to face, but how are you embodying it yourself right now? How are you continuing the tradition? Are you breaking the chain of pain, or are you still caught in it? So the key is looking for whether or not you're passive, letting things happen without your active agency, whether you look for special relationships to keep it high all the time, not want to get down and dirty with other facts. We also call it having no boundaries, letting people step all over you. Later this week we'll talk more about shame and what that does. But it's like having a leak in the bucket. You can't carry or contain the energy. I used to have a teacher in Tennessee who used to say, you got to plug the holes in your bucket, boy. You can't go down to the well, draw the water, and if you don't plug the holes in the bucket, by the time you get the bucket with water back to where you want to use it, it's all leaked out. So I know a lot of different ways of changing consciousness, or used to say getting high, but you can't contain it. You can't maintain it unless you plug the holes in your bucket. And lose the naivete that makes you think everybody speaks straight. Unfortunately, people are twisted. They don't have boundaries. They don't have a container. They haven't been blessed. And you can see it in their face, in their actions, in their words, how they express themselves. So many of us have been taught to understand what gold is, the wonderful things about human beings, but nobody wants to understand the poverty aspects of human beings. So that's why they say working in your daily life, chopping wood, carrying water, that's the way to rake through the cinders. That's the way to face anything in life that takes you down and out and doesn't increase your social status. So I hope that you'll understand that you don't have to walk around with a smiley face all the time, expecting in a hopeful way. If you have vision, you can. But if you haven't sifted through the ashes of your own life, then you'll find it's very, very hard to replace the part of you that feels helpless, antisocial, brittle, isolated, derelict. So keep your art form going. Don't let what happened in the past shred you completely. And look for those opportunities to descend, being discharged from the army, getting divorced, having a broken bone or a hospitalization, having an accident, and of course, death of anybody in the family, any illness, anything that you wish wouldn't happen, but of course, it did. So you can't prevent it because that's life.